1, 2. There we go. Now I can hear. Oh, whoops. Captain Butt. Oh, that's quite the name. Love your content. Thank you, Finn. That's awfully kind of you, sir. We'll see who we get to join us today. I got some pretty good debates queued up for tomorrow and the next day. I got to do some reaction content too. I got to react to some flat Earth stuff. There's nothing stopping me. Oh, check. I gotta go check. Okay, yeah, looks like it. I cut the bandwidth down because we were having some, and it's kind of blurry, but what are you gonna do? I've talked to this person before.
Yeah, you remember my face, right?
What's up?
Anyways, so what's the second law of thermodynamics? You know of it, right?
Yeah.
Entropy, yeah. It's up, then entropy increases, and everything balances out, right? So balances out into nothing, right? Because all the energy will be used up, and then that means like it's over, right? What do you make of that?
What is... I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. I guess I could agree with you, kind of, on your description of it.
As energy
Therefore,
decreases, entropy increases. So the energy has to be utilized for the entropy to increase.
yeah.
Means it has a progression point. Am I wrong?
I mean, it's a good enough description, I think.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If it had a starting origin point, it contradicts the second law of the natural world. But there's a solution that you can't have. It's supernatural. There you go. So we start off from it being external. It's above and beyond natural. Comes from the Latin word supernaturalis. So it's just by definition, outside of the natural world.
Oh, yeah.
People want to say it's God, but it's just beyond the natural world. Because how do we have energy here? Energy couldn't create itself, right? You know this, right? Matter couldn't create itself, right?
Yeah.
You know this, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be external. You know this, right? Yo, this is kind of crazy, brother.
Yeah. Anyways, we've talked before, and I know that you don't like seriously mean anything that you say, so. The Latin word supernaturalist. Yeah. Hey.
So the reason I believe in creationism, I'm curious why you don't, but I don't see where the creative element of is. I think if you've got something like complex, like an ear, which I think is quite a complex structure of multiple parts, then, I mean, the most I've heard is so through natural selection it develops, but how can an ear slightly develop and still not be able to perceive sound yet and not aid its survival, but then develop into something quite complex?
An ear that is different than a human ear can still hear sounds. We actually have a really good track record of the development of the mammalian ear through the fossil record. So reptiles, for example, their bottom jaw is made of 3 separate bones, whereas in us, it's one solid bone. So what happened to those other bones? We can see some of the other bones in reptiles toward the back literally getting smaller and smaller and migrating up toward reptiles have ears, but they function differently than ours do, right? We can see those bones slowly migrating up in some of these very ancient ancestors. And then those bones were adapted into the Malleus, Incus, and Stapes. Some reptiles, they literally rest their chin on the ground, and that helps them pick up vibrations for them to hear. That's not the only way they do it, but that is something that they do. But anyways, we can see the inner ear of mammals developing in the fossil record. Sort of an irreducible complexity argument, like in a way. But also, if you're just going to say it has to be designed, if the only way an ear that can hear properly can work is for it to be designed, then why are there so many different designs? Why would to argue that it needs to be created or whatever? I don't think that really predicts that there would be multiple designs that are all radically different from each other. Whereas in evolution, that is the kind of thing that we would expect.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I suppose for me it's more like the brain interpreting the signal. How does the brain know to interpret that signal?
It doesn't know to do it. That you can't not hear something.
Okay, yeah, I kind of see what you're saying.
Yeah. Know too much. If I'd been like, I don't know, why don't you tell me? Maybe that would have gone on for more. That's a little annoying. Seemed like a good dude. Yeah, I mean, the Big Bang is creationism? No, it isn't. What's the argument for if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? You should buy my first book, Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, because that's the very first claim in the book. There's like 4 separate evolve from what people imagine is modern day monkeys, because what they say is, then why aren't monkeys turning into humans today? There are monkeys because monkeys evolved, and we evolved. We evolved differently along different paths in different places at different times. Even if we did evolve from those monkeys would stop existing because dogs come from wolves and wolves still exist. What else is wrong with it? If we evolve from why are there still monkeys? Again, we don't come from modern day living monkeys, so I guess that's the problem. They evolved on their own. I kind of already went over that, but there's like 2 problems in one with that one. Nice plug to your book. I mean, it's a decent book. Where are the ops? Chat. I'm looking for ops. Yeah, that's true. Apes don't have tails. If Americans came from Europe, why are there still Europeans? Yeah, also true. Would I ever own a monkey? No, it would be so cool, but at the same time, it would just, I don't know, it seems wrong to me. Eric, this is important. I can't read the tick. unfortunately. I can if I can't actually read that. I said in a debate that we get something from nothing all the time. Could you elaborate? I've definitely... The original, huh? Hello?
Hey man, how's it going?
Good enough.
Good, good. Creationism was like the truth, like with the and only the Earth only being 6,000 years. Would we have as many species as we did, or as we do? I guess does that make sense? Like, how far along would we be on that species scale, or do you know, or is that even a question that you can answer?
So it's possible that, well, the problem is God could have just created all the species we see today. Insects and some other animals that breed pretty quickly. I mean, like, amphibians and fish, they lay hundreds of eggs at a time. So you'd have to break it down by taxon, I guess. If there were only 1,000 mammal species at creation 6,000 years ago, how many would there be today? Really impossible to imagine we'd get to that. I think there's 5,000 mammal species today. There's only and don't have that many offspring, except for a few species of rodents or whatever. So could some subspecies pop up? Yeah, but not to the amount that we have today. So, I mean, the question doesn't have an answer because of the different rates of breeding for different types of organisms, but no, I mean, and it also depends on what you're starting with. I mean, if creation started with 1% of the species we have today, then we're not going to get to what we see today.
That's fair, man. It's like lunacy to me that people think that that's the case. I don't understand it. I also want to say, love what you do, man. I stopped by Darth's things and I was like, oh, Peterson cooked you, and then he was like, if you don't come up here right now, I'm gonna block you. And then he blocked me. So I was like, okay,
wow,
I guess. Thanks, buddy.
You're not missing anything.
I know. He's into keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's see. No, I'm not going to do it right now. I'll do it later.
What's up, buddy?
Hi.
Hi. Just wanted to say, there's nothing wrong with owning a monkey. Technically, they are primates. Well, they are primates, and those are roommates.
What you're saying?
You said you didn't want to own a monkey. You said it was wrong. It was just a
Yeah.
joke. It's just a joke. Just want to say, love your content. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
I will try. Thank you.
All right.
All right. No ops. Well, except for that first guy, but he left after 2 minutes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so I just wanted to say, so I'm an atheist, and I agree with the first 4 points that are on your screen, but the last one I think is a little problematic for a few reasons. So, like, there's like a lot of different ways that people kind of divvy up different notions of evidence, and it's kind of like context specific, going from like how you would actually evaluate a claim within a context. And so I think if what you're saying, I think what you're saying is that there's no sufficient evidence, like sufficient empirical evidence, but a lot of people, and most likely yourself included, have kind of like a Bayesian outlook on it, where it's like a claim or a piece of something that raises the probability of a claim. So like if you think about, okay, so if this God was real, what are the claims that are attached to it that it's like part of the story? What would it entail? And you have all these different things. Somebody could believe in that God and then look at some of the things that are entailed by it and be like, okay, well, at least this piece of the puzzle is here, so this raises the probability of the claim. And they could just call that evidence, and they would be, at least by a lot of accepted definitions, sufficient, but it would still be evidence. So if you just have on your screen no evidence of God, it's really vague as to what you mean by it.
Sure. I mean,
You see
fair
what I mean?
enough. It has to be short because I don't have a lot of real estate up here, and the clickbaity nature of it is good for business. So, but no, I mean, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but the problem with even if we adopt that framework that you're talking about that they would use, that literally is all just hypotheticals. Because if you want to do Bayesian, if you want to do it like from a Bayesian approach, you still have to have priors, and we don't know what the priors are. You can make the argument. The Bayesian priors for God are still literally just hypotheticals. They're not known things. So you can argue that, well, we would expect a world created by God to be intelligible because God would desire that. Oh, it would? That's literally just a hypothetical, you know? So I still don't, my general thing that I don't really say it much anymore because it doesn't come up, but what I tell people is an argument isn't evidence. And
well, okay. So there's a lot of. I want to point out two things. The one you said as an argument isn't evidence. There's definitely reasons for people to consider that arguments should be considered evidence. But that aside, when you're saying like it was hypothetical, I think I guess the point I'm trying to make is the vagueness of what you have up on the screen, and then in turning to like hypotheticals, somebody can kind of turn that around on you as a gotcha. Like we reason that things are evidence for certain other things, like that possibly lead to conclusions all the time outside of deduction. And so they'll be like, okay, anytime that you look at this and you have this hypothetical in your mind, which you're using as an assumption for your evidence, like to like regard the probability of something, that's also hypothetical. So why in those cases is this permissible, yet in cases of God it wouldn't be? And they would have a point if they said what they said. So like, I guess
sure.
my only point of contention here is that even if you didn't go out of your way to lay out what you mean by evidence, if you just put sufficient evidence on the screen, it would really get the point across, no matter what anybody turned to, because otherwise it just kind of seems like it could be turned around on you.
I mean, I guess I kind of hear what you're saying, but even if I don't think that there's any evidence of God and it all has to be done like, you know, just on hypotheticals or whatever, then I'm not gonna sit up here and say, no, I not only do you not have empirical evidence that God exists, I have empirical evidence that God does not exist. I mean, I don't, because if we were going to approach it that way, then I would use these, like, I would weigh their probabilistic arguments against what you would probabilistically see in a universe, you know, without a God. So, yeah, I take your point, I get it, but I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal, I guess.
I mean, maybe not. If you said like you like it up there for the clickbaity kind of stuff, or bring people in, that might bring a meaningful discussion. I could definitely see somebody that's like, you know, approaching things from the philosophical side of things. I think they could definitely kind of, you know, cling to that and make some pretty good cases, even if they're not. Even if they don't believe in God, like I don't believe in God. In fact, I believe there isn't one. But that would still be a thing that I think, you know, given how much motivation I had, I could probably argue that pretty well. It would get more and more technical down the rabbit hole as it goes. But anyway, I just wanted to pop up and say that. That's the only thing I saw.
Oh, no problem.
But thanks for having me up.
You're welcome. All right. Still looking for ops. Hello?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good enough.
So this is the important question I had for you in the comments that you didn't see. And depending on your answer, this could make or break creationism. Metallica or Megadeth?
I literally couldn't even tell you one, so I can't really give you an answer.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good one, man. Love the show.
Thank you. I don't listen to metal. Sorry. I get so much shit for that whenever it gets brought up, which isn't very often. But when it does happen. Metallica, though? Yeah. What do you listen to? I actually don't listen to a lot of music anymore, which is very strange. But no, I just like different genres of rock, like Southern blues, classic rock. I don't really... and alternative rock. Well, I mean, I like the alternative rock of the 90s, I guess. There's a lot of 90s stuff I like. There's nobody here. Actually, these are typical numbers for me. Do I like the Arctic Monkeys? I like... Agree. The hair metal phase of the 80s, the like diet metal music, I never ever liked any of that music except for Guns N' Roses, if they count. Bro, let me in. Literally nobody is in the guest box. Would you sign my poster of you? You have a poster of me? Yeah, sure, I'll sign it. Quack.
What's up?
Hello?
Hey.
Not too much.
Okay. Cool. So you said that, well, one of the guests you brought on kind of steel man my position pretty well. I was just going to take issue with the claim that there's no evidence for God. Evidence, like testimony, even if you don't think the Bible's eyewitness testimony, there's people, ordinary people, who think they've encountered God, and they may be deluded, may not be, but that's still evidence.
Yeah, fit. Or if I would, I mean, if I would like find a way to refute the evidence, then I would claim that no, there isn't evidence. There are claims of evidence, but I don't think take something that we know is false, like the earth is flat. But if we reject that evidence, then there isn't any, I'm not like, it doesn't mean never could there ever be evidence. I just find that, or even really good for the most part, but that's a fair point.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I agree with you on that. I don't think that the evidence for God, I think some of it is just intrinsically unfalsifiable. Like, I can claim that God visited me in person, I got to touch his hands and all that. Like, that's not something you can disprove, but it would be evidence, and it would be admissible in the court of law. Like, if it were a murder case, if you say, Jim Bob was there when I saw him.
I can hear you, but it does sound like you're underwater.
Okay, I don't know how to fix that. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't really think that's a very interesting conversation to have, but there is one thing I want to talk to you about, which is the Torah, where Jacob birds sheep, and he uses sticks. And he used that as evidence that the Bible is fallible. Yeah. So I want to challenge you on that a little bit. I don't think I can convince you of God today in one conversation, but I think I can change your mind, at least on that passage.
Okay. So just so to give people background, I believe it's in Genesis. It says, and I believe it's God speaking to them, it says if you carve some sticks so that the sticks have stripes on them, and you put it in the feeding or watering troughs of the cattle, I think it was, then that will cause them to have stripes. And he said, if you find one scientific falsehood or whatever in the Bible, then I think he said he would stop believing. And so like I brought that up and I was like, yeah, that would never happen. And his argument that is what happens. It just said that did happen. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's why I don't gamble like that and say this would convince me. I don't know what would necessarily, but yeah.
Fair enough.
Let's just pull up that passage. Let's do a Bible study together. Can't believe I'm doing a Bible study with you. Look at that. We're making progress. Genesis. Sheep. So I don't think God ever talks to Jacob and tells him, hey, if you do this, then this will happen. Jacob, okay, so it's Genesis 30. Genesis 30.
Genesis 30. Okay, 37 through 43. Lou, I got some apples. Lou, you got some too. Lou, I got some apples.
So it says...
you got some too.
So the context is Jacob works for his uncle and makes a deal with him, his uncle Laban. He says, hey, if I work for you, give me all of your sheep that you don't want, like the spotted ones, and I'll get to keep them in return for me, like keeping your herds and whatnot. And he's like, all right, deal, because he doesn't really want the spotted sheep. And so what happens was Jacob ends up breeding the spotted sheep. Or no, he ends up breeding all the sheep, but he feeds them like striped sticks, or like he puts striped sticks near the watering trough so that they start producing more spotted sheep. And then his flock grows to where it's bigger than Laban's flock. I think that's how this works.
I mean, I can just read it real quick. I have it pulled up here.
Okay, cool. Let's do that.
So I'm going to start at verse 35. That same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob, however, took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the peeled branches in all the watering trough of the flock, so that they would be, directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flock were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streak and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever they're on the troughs, and the animals would mate near the branches. So yeah, it's not like it's. I thought maybe it had to do like change the water or something, but apparently if they just bone in the presence of striped sticks, that has an effect on them. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals in this way. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks. And there we go.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different from what you said. It's not like God is giving Jacob this idea. So this is what I think is going on here. I think...
Yeah, it has nothing to do with God. You're right. He didn't say, do this and this will happen.
Yeah, exactly. So what I think is going on here is comedic irony. Like, this is supposed to be a comedic episode, even for the people who are writing it, the people who are reading it back then. Because this is a pastoral society. Okay, and so like their entire world revolves around like herding sheep and goats. Like they sacrifice sheep and goats to their god, and they herd them. Like, I don't think you need an understanding of Mendelian genetics to be able to do Punnett squares. Inheritance works. At least have some rudiment. They did know how to breed, because there's like some passages in like Leviticus that require a unblemished red heifer to be sacrificed. I don't know the passage, but I know that like in the Levant today, you cannot find unblemished red heifers or red cows. The only place you can find them today is in Texas. There's like this evangelical family that runs a farm in Texas, and they have these unblemished red heifers that they got through selective breeding. And so I think even back then, they had a rudimentary understanding of selective breeding. Like, I think that's reasonable to assume. And so what's going on here is like, if you look at the whole story of Genesis, Jacob kind of has a habit of coming up with like these crackpot, like harebrained ways of getting his way. Like he's a con artist basically. Like he conned his brother out of his inheritance, you know? So he's like always scheming, always coming up with like the most ridiculous, overcomplicated plots to get his way. That's like his character. And then it backfires with Rachel. So he wanted to marry her, and then his father-in-law ended up marrying off his other daughter instead, basically conning Jacob out of 7 more years of indentured servitude. But the point is, like, that's his whole character arc. And the irony here is that even when it's not supposed to work, even when like there's no causal connection between striped sticks and goats, even when it shouldn't work, it works. Because for some reason, God likes this guy. And he's so lucky that he can pick the goats that have the recessive gene for striped or speckled, spotted, whatever. He can pick those goats, even though he doesn't know that they're carrying the recessive gene, and breed them. And he's just getting lucky, basically. Like, that's what's going on here. But in his mind, he thinks it's because of the striped sticks. When in reality, he's just a lucky.
It was a joke. Now you're saying God is somehow making him pick out the sheep that don't have stripes but do have the recessive allele for it. And therefore, when they breed, sometimes the striped trait comes out.
Well, I'm not saying that God is making him pick the right sheep. I'm just saying he's just getting incredibly lucky every single time.
Is assisting or intervening in this process. But earlier you said it's a joke, like it's literary irony.
Yeah, comedic irony.
But
the
right.
joke,
Well, if you're going to say it's irony, then it didn't really happen. But now you're saying that it did happen.
well, like this shouldn't be working, but it somehow is working. Like that's where the irony is coming from.
I mean, okay. So my general response to this would be that I think there's, I don't want to say this, unless you take this interpretation of it, and you can say like, well, back then when the story was around, nobody needed to set up the humor because it was all obvious, you know? And it's like, well, I mean, okay, but in extremely kooky ideas about life for a very, very, this idea of spontaneous generation was really popular. There was this guy named Jean-Baptiste van Helmont, and he wrote like recipes on how to spontaneously generate life. He has one that's just, it's so unbelievably stupid. He said if you take a brick out of a wall and put inside the brick some fragrant oils and basil, I remember specifically it was basil, and a few other things, and then put the brick back, that will make scorpions. Now, I don't know what possibly could have led him to that conclusion, because also it's literally impossible that anybody ever did that and scorpions actually did appear behind there. I mean, if it did coincidentally somehow, then that's just like the craziest thing I've ever heard. But like people were committed to these ideas about where life comes from that just had nothing to do with reality. So I think the idea that having your goats bang in front of some stripes would imprint on them stripes was just completely believable by people back then who were totally ignorant about how anything with regard to that really works. Now, I do appreciate and accept the argument that pastoral people that bred animals kind of knew what would give them good odds of, like what to do and what not to do with their animals. Like they had an intuitive statistical kind of idea about that, but I also don't doubt in any way that they would fall for that either, given what we know about other stupid and silly ideas people have believed.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think like the difficulty here is like the interpretation could have changed over time. I'm sure like over the centuries, people could have read this text in Israel because, you know, the history of Israel is like happens over the course of thousands of years. So there could have been different times and different places where people read the text and took it literally, and then there could have been times where people took it ironically or read it ironically and saw it for its comedic value. I think though that the case can be made, like a real author, meant this as a joke, because just before this happens, like in Genesis 30 or Genesis 29, Jacob is scammed out of marrying Rachel. No, wait. Where does he marry Rachel? Oh, yeah, it is Genesis 29. So, like, that episode is comedic, yeah?
Yeah, but even if I adopt that, I could simply supposed to be Jacob being a trickster or whatever, because I could just interpret it as he forfeits all of his striped sheep, but then comes up with this trick that still gives him striped and spotted sheep anyways. Aha, like he's the original Loki or something. That interpretation doesn't, I don't see how that interpretation in any way undercuts the fact that it says that doing this literally caused striped sheep and goats or whatever it is. You can still adopt that and still think that these people really, and whoever wrote it, really did think that that would or could work.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's not like the reading I'm putting forward in any way debunks any other plausible reading. Like, I think it's just as plausible to say that, yeah, like the biblical authors, I think irony could still work in this context, even if they thought it was literal. Only thing I would say to that is, like, this is a pastoral society, and there are like certain laws in the Old Testament where if you want to make a sacrifice, you have to sacrifice an unblemished goat. And if you're a goat herder, that kind of sucks. Like, if you have a flock of goats and you have to sacrifice like 10% of them for the tithe or whatever, that really sucks. So I imagine they had some selective breeding practices, and they would have had more knowledge on it. I guess, like, if I were to make the case stronger, I would need like more external evidence that the Israelites knew how to breed goats. Maybe there are some other
passages. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd have to find like maybe a passage in the Old Testament where some sort of genetic inheritance, some rudimentary understanding is present, especially in Genesis, because that would imply that the writer at least had some understanding of how inheritance usually works. But yeah, that's all I wanted to do, was just to give an alternate account from Voice of Reason, because I think it was a little bit bizarre to me. I think he was just saying like, oh, it's just a miracle, like when it doesn't seem like that is implied in the text. And I mean, I guess it is sort of a pseudo miracle if you say that Jacob's lucky because God's blessed him. That's not necessarily miraculous, but it is kind of like God's assisting. But
I mean, he's like
a little bit,
I don't know, like a golfer hits the ball and it's this close to being a hole in one, and then God causes an earthquake and the ball falls in. God didn't hit the ball that close to the cup, but he manipulated things so that that outcome still occurred, so.
Yeah. I think that kind of help, divine assistance, if you will, like happens throughout Genesis. Like, it doesn't just happen here. Like, I'm assuming it's happening here, but I think it happens in other places too, without. When like Jacob doesn't deserve it because he's a scumbag. So yeah. Yeah. I think to me that just makes more sense than whatever Voice of Reason was going.
Sure.
And it's far more plausible to, at least in the context of the passage and all that.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we can probably leave it there. I got some other people that want to chat.
All right. Thanks for talking. Bye.
You're welcome. I haven't talked to PMARS in so long. Yo.
Yeah, I don't think you should say there's no evidence for God, because God would be like a starting point or like first principle assumption from which that would like make evidence possible.
That's just the presupposition that you have. That's not evidence.
Right. So that's the thing, though. God, God is like a first principle belief. Everyone has a first principle, right?
Yep, that's not evidence either. That the supernatural realm doesn't exist. There, I just objectively proved that God doesn't exist.
Well, okay, no, that's not how that works. So
that's exactly how it works for you,
no.
Doing the opposite. So, yes, that is exactly how it works. Okay, go ahead.
For there to be evidence, we have to solve the problem of induction, right?
No.
No. But also
evidence doesn't deal in absolutes. Evidence isn't about getting to an absolute.
Are you certain about that?
Sure.
Are you certain about that?
Yeah.
Are you certain about that?
As certain as I can be.
If you don't believe,
Peterson. I don't think so.
Okay. So all
you do realize that when I make a linguistic or a logical statement, that's not the same as using evidence to know things about the natural world, right?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Okay. So what you were doing was you were asking me about how is it that we use evidence to know about things, and I explained it to you. And then you conflated that with, oh, how do you jive that with your first principles or your worldview or your presuppositions? Well, I don't use them for those presuppositions because presuppositions are unjustified. They're just starting points that we have to engage in whatever conversations or do the process of trying to. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a category error, but you switched things in there.
I didn't switch anything. If your starting point...
No, you did. I just explained it, but go ahead.
You don't know what you're talking
about. No, I do know what I'm talking about because you asked me how do we use evidence to increase knowledge about things. That's very different about how I presuppose that process works. I have to, or whatever, a framework that I adopt in order to point in how I deal with evidence, but the evidence doesn't increase the odds of that because there are things that like you can't prove, whatever. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay, but like if we're having a debate and you go, well, I don't have to justify my starting point. Well, then I win the debate.
Yeah, like you don't. Yeah, because it's presupposed.
Then I win the debate because then if you
no, I win the debate because I presuppose that you're wrong. And you presuppose that you're right, but I presuppose that you're wrong, so I win the debate.
What?
How? By presupposing it. You guys literally don't ever try to, like, the whole tag tactic is just to say, well, I proved that the contrary is impossible. Okay, how about shift the burden of proof to yourself? No, I don't have to do that. Like, just presupposing that you are correct.
But that's not what we're doing. So we're giving reasons for why we're correct. But debate is a reason-giving game. We're supposed to give reasons for our position in the debate. So my reason for
because you asked me about my presuppositions, and presuppositions aren't justified.
I don't agree with that, though. I justify my...
Okay, well, that's just literally what a presupposition is.
But that's literally not the case. I don't agree
with that. Yes, it is. It's presupposed.
Okay, but we would use a transcendental...
presupposition, a thing tacitly assumed beforehand at the beginning of a line of argument or course of action. Right, so it's a starting point for how you go about doing things or giving a line of argumentation.
Sure, but if your starting point isn't justified, then all of your reasoning...
Presuppositions aren't justified. They are tacitly assumed.
No, I justify my presuppositions, because if you don't
Go ahead and tell me how you do it.
Well, we would use a presuppositional argument.
So you would Yeah, go ahead and do it.
Right, so the presuppositional argument, we would... when we're dealing with starting point, principle, belief, we can't use a correspondence theory of truth because that's the belief we use to evaluate reality. So there's no reality to correspond to.
So you can't retroactively, you can't recursively justify your presupposition with anything that the presupposition is designed in order to allow you to do. That's exactly what I said. So what do you want to talk about next?
So we would use a coherentist theory of truth, right? We all have to use inductive reasoning, which means our presuppositions have to account for the problem of induction. And since the Christian presupposition can account for the problem of induction, which is necessary for like science.
Explain to me how it accounts for it.
So in the Christian worldview, we know that like gravity is going to hold day by day by day because it's like.
Explain to me how you know that.
Because it's part of God's plan, and then he reveals that knowledge to us. Revelation.
Explain to me how you know that.
That is the explanation.
That is the explanation, that it's revealed to you. So what's to stop me from the truth revealed to me that God doesn't exist?
Because like when we're talking about a worldview, our starting point, we're talking about reality. We're not talking about a hypothetical.
I'm not giving you a hypothetical. I'm telling you that this really happened. The truth revealed to me that God doesn't exist. So how is that equal to your claim, worse than your claim, better than your claim?
So imagine I provided like empirical evidence that the dog was in the backyard, right? And you said, well, hypothetically, it could be in the kitchen. Does your hypothetical trump my empirical evidence? No.
No, but you didn't give empirical evidence, and I didn't give you a hypothetical.
Well, see...
Well, I kind of said hypothetically, I said hypothetically what's stopping me from saying that, or like what would your counter to it be? But you didn't empirically prove anything. You just gave me a list of worldview.
Well, yeah, it wasn't so much a hypothetical as a pathetical. But like, there's tangible evidence in my position, right? Like, because the Bible's tangible, the history of the church is tangible, and then there's like metaphysics that are tangible. Whereas like when you're talking about like, oh, the truth revealed this to me that there's no God, there's nothing tangible there to support. So that you're just...
There's nothing tangible about your personal revelation, which is what this all came down to.
I'm not appealing to a personal revelation. I'm appealing to natural and special revelation.
What's tangible about those things?
Well, like history is tangible. I didn't invent that, right? That's not just a fantasy. There's a real...
You're not really tracking here. So I actually have some questions. Like, I'm not trying to be a dick or anything, and I don't think you are either, like, just for the record. But I wanted to ask you some questions about this whole thing, because what I typically like to take this is I ask people that adopt this framework, if you had two people, like if you had an identical twin brother, but he was not a presuppositionalist, what is your brother incapable of doing that you are capable of doing other than reaffirming your presuppositions? Is there anything?
I mean, it's just like someone who doesn't...
Hold on. I got a Nazi in my chat. How do I block this person? Give me a moment here. Oh yeah, this is on YouTube. Okay, hold on. I just put user in timeout for 24 hours there. Yeah. Sorry about that. Anyways, what's going on?
Say that, like, as a Christian, I'm capable of debating and it like can get somewhere, because like without God, if we disagree, there's no like standards to determine who's correct. That's the problem with...
Right. So how is that not doing anything other than what I said was reaffirming your presupposition? You're just saying other people that don't adopt my framework are wrong, and they can't make a case for being right, and I can. Yeah, that's your worldview. Other than, like, do you think a presuppositionalist scientist would be able to invent things that a secular scientist would not and never could be able to?
Like belief in God isn't going to necessarily make your science better, but it could give your science like purpose and direction. Because without God, science really has no.
Just again reaffirming your beliefs and presuppositions.
Reaffirming, no.
It doesn't do anything.
I mean, it gives us like a standard to see like who's right or wrong. Without God,
To you,
no.
So
No, it's an objective standard.
according to you, yeah, you define it to be that way.
No, think about this. Like, if we disagreed on what or you say Animal Farm is about, the Bolshevik revolution, there's no way to tell who's correct unless there's an author to meaning George Orwell revolution, and there's context to say that you're correct and I'm wrong.
What if literally everything we know about the world disagrees with what the book says? Then what do we do?
Well, the point is, if there's no author to the world, if there's no inherent meaning to the world.
I didn't say the world. I'm talking about the book. I write a book that's so, do you think that that's true?
No, but that's a good example.
Okay, but you have to appeal to my book, to me, the author who wrote the book that makes the claim about the world.
So flat earther, yeah, but here's the point. Flat earthers and a sphere earther, they look at the same evidence, right? But the difference is the flat earther interprets the evidence differently. And then so the question is, who's interpreting the data correctly? Because this is called underdetermination of data in science. It's a big problem for science. And so this is what God solves, right? God gives us an answer to how to interpret the world correctly.
How do we do that?
We accept God's revelation. Without God's revelation, we don't have an objective standard to interpret evidence.
So what did God reveal to you about the world?
That it's like I know there's a physical world, right? You just assume there's a physical world. You don't have any.
No, you assume that it's been revealed to you that that's the case, and I assume that I exist in the world. It's a true fact that the universe exists. I'm a part of it, and information about it is able to obtain that information. We both merely presuppose that. But a question would then be, do you agree that there are galaxies billions of light years away?
No, you don't. You're not getting it. So when I believe that
I don't care if you don't think I don't get it. I literally don't care. Do you accept that there are galaxies billions of light years away?
No.
You don't. Are you a flat earther?
No.
Okay. Do you think the Andromeda galaxy exists? That one's only 2 million light years away. Okay. Are you a young Earth creationist? Okay, so you have to interpret the world around you in a way that conforms to worldview, rather than letting that data.
But the data doesn't,
because you can't see millions of light years if the light's only been traveling for 6,000 years.
But this is your problem. The data.
No, it's not my problem.
Fossil has a voice and go, "Hi, I'm a fossil. I'm 7 million years old, Planet Peterson."
I think people have brains and they can interpret data. You think the same thing. It's
But then
just that
there's the
when that
question.
data disagrees with your presupposed worldview, you say the way we interpret the data is flawed.
No, that's the question. That's what's under dispute. Who is interpreting evidence correctly, right? And under your God, you have no way to know who's interpreting data correctly, because science.
You don't. You can't just say I presuppose that God is what allows us to interpret data. I win.
Okay, but you don't win because But now
I do win because I presuppose that that's how it works.
But on your model, there's no way to tell who's interpreting data correctly. That's the problem.
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't. Science doesn't.
Yes, there is.
Science gives us data points. It doesn't tell us how to. How do you solve the underdetermination of data?
I don't know what you mean by that.
It's a big problem. Don't you think? Do you not look at any of the criticisms of science? You just have blind faith in science.
I don't care much for what presuppositionalists say because you're all a bunch of goofy guys.
It's a thing in philosophy for science. Philosophy of science, underdetermination of data.
Cool.
Don't you? Wow. So you just blind. You have blind faith without
Nope.
reason. You just accept. Well, you don't know.
No, scientific.
You don't even know the
PMARS,
problem
you
with
accept almost any of the scientific experiments yourself. So why are you blindly accepting all of these scientific facts?
I don't. I'm aware of the criticism.
So you don't think that atoms exist?
I'm not blindly. I'm a critical.
The question was, do you think atoms exist?
It was a loaded question.
Yeah, so the question was, do you think atoms exist?
Why are you so rude?
I'm not. You're not answering my question. So, do you think atoms exist?
It's a loaded question. It's loaded like Ernest Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway, yeah. Do you think that atoms exist?
Have you seen Sabrina?
So the question is, do you think that atoms exist?
I don't know. I've been watching Sabrina's videos.
Okay. So, anyways, Sabine Hassenfelder?
Yeah, Sabine's videos.
Yeah, I don't watch any of her stuff. I'm not particularly a huge fan.
Oh, she seems.
Anyways,
she thinks that particle physics is a mathematical hoax.
Cool, and other physicists don't think so. So, PMARS, I have a question. I have a series of questions for you. If a Christian told you that they saw a unicorn, would you believe them? Keep in mind, they have an objective standard of how to know true facts according to you. So would you believe them?
No, would you?
No, I would not. Why would you not believe them?
Because we have evidence that unicorns don't exist.
So that's how you determine. So it has nothing to do with your presuppositionalist beliefs?
Well, unlike you, Planet Peterson, I'm evidence-based.
The question is, if a Christian said to you, I saw a unicorn, and then they argued to you, hey, I have the objective standard of truth, so you're not allowed to say that to revelation from the Bible to claim that they have the exclusive means of being able to validate claims, and so you don't get to claim that they didn't see a unicorn.
I would say, like, where did you get this, like, horseshit interpretation? Did you get this from, like, some dumb idiot like Planet Peterson? Because this is a straw man of the Christian position.
They saw a unicorn. You wouldn't believe them because we don't have evidence of unicorns. So it doesn't ultimately have anything to do with being revealed some sort of special ability to know things.
Would be a type of evidence, right? In a Christian model. I know you don't.
Okay. Anyways,
you don't accept that. But I'm evidence-based.
I don't really know where you're going with that. So, anyways,
I'm evidence-based.
Let's say there's a religion out there that it's I don't know. It's
science?
like whatever. It's some random religion. We'll just call it Ding Dong.
Let's call it science.
0 out of 10 rage bait. So there's some religion out there, this religious group that has these stories that are thousands of years old. They have a story that says one day the earth stopped spinning. Do you believe them?
I don't believe religious claims.
So so you don't believe them?
Because it sounds like bullshit.
Okay. You do know that the Bible says that happened once, right?
But the Bible's legit.
Okay, so you literally believe in contradictions, apparently. I don't know what to do with you, because if somebody told you, if a religion had a story that said the earth stopped spinning, you so believe. And ultimately, you'd have all these, if we could have unpacked that further, but you're very dishonest, so I didn't really try to, you would have appealed to all these naturalistic reasons. But now when I say, did you know that the Bible says that happened? You say, it did happen because the Bible is true. You're going in a circle.
Yeah, but if you don't go in a circle, so I want to have evidence for things. That's why I'm a Christian.
You don't have what evidence of God do you have?
I would say arguments are evidence. Well, the
Can you
evidence
prove that.
So, like,
do you have evidence of that?
Yes. So
could you give me the evidence that arguments are evidence?
You want the evidence that arguments are evidence?
Yeah, could you do that for me? Because if you can't, then your worldview falls apart.
The evidence that arguments are evidence.
Yeah, because you made that claim, so can you back that claim up? Can you put it in reverse for me, Terry?
I would say, like, if we're going to be technical, that arguments would give that arguments contain evidence. So like I would say like
So you can't. Okay, that's fine.
The fact that you're talking would be evidence, right? You're talking.
I don't know what to believe. I don't really do it either. I just have questions. I have no answers, but
that you're talking, right? So I can take from that the fact that you're talking. For you to talk, there has to be some uniformity to nature, because if there's
suppose that too, and I presuppose that.
But that's losing
in the chat. These people, I've never seen any of these people.
Debate is a reason-giving game. So if I can give a reason for the uniformity of nature and you can't, then I win the debate.
You can just presuppose that you have an account for it, and I'll just presuppose that I have an account for it, and then it's actually a stalemate. So, anyways, okay. Why are there so many thousands of denominations of Christianity, and why do people interpret the Bible so differently if God is revealing the truth to all of them?
Because in Christianity, God is about freedom, and God gives us the freedom to bear witness testimony to His Word. And He gives us the freedom to interpret that word. So,
do you know that it's possible that your interpretation is the wrong interpretation?
There isn't like one correct cookie cutter interpretation. There's a little freedom.
So you admit that you could be wrong?
Well, what would it mean to be wrong? Like, wouldn't we need God to determine? Like in your worldview, right and wrong.
So the question is, do you think that you could be wrong? Is it possible that your interpretation could be wrong?
What would it mean to be wrong without God?
This is literally according to you. It's not according to me. So literally pretend that your presuppositions or whatever are correct. Is it possible that you're wrong? So you know the answer is yes, but you can't say yes to the divine revelatory nature of Scripture in order to know what the truth is and make claims about the truth. Completely falls apart.
Well, your question's incoherent because I would use God's revelation to verify right and wrong. So how would I, if I'm wrong about revelation, then what would it even mean to be right? It wouldn't have no meaning to be right or wrong.
I don't really know what you just said there. So do you think that it's possible that you're wrong?
That's an incoherent question. Another loaded. All right.
So not every Christian's interpretation of Scripture can be correct, right?
There could be multiple correct interpretations.
Yeah, like you could have correct interpretations that overlap with some of theirs, but not all of them, something like that or whatever. Like there are evolutionary theists out there, like Inspiring Philosophy, right? So he believes Jesus died and resurrected, and he believes God created the universe. So is it possible that Michael Jones is wrong, or is right? Actually, I should say.
He's definitely wrong about evolution, yeah.
Is it possible that he's right?
I don't think so.
Okay, so is it possible that you're wrong?
About evolution? No.
Why is it impossible that you're wrong?
Because if evolution is true, that means the Bible isn't true. And if the Bible's not true...
So there's so many problems with that. One being that you said that if this is the case, then the Bible would be false, which isn't impossible. It's just that you wouldn't be able to objectively, you don't think that anybody would objectively be able to say that it's false. So that's interesting. So you think that it is possible that the Bible is false?
No.
Maybe that's what you meant by the incoherency thing earlier. If it was false, then nobody could say anything is true. So, yeah, okay. So that it's not true. That's cool.
No, I didn't say that.
You did. What do you want to talk about next? Okay. Oh, man. That was fun. I don't know who's been waiting the longest, so I'm just gonna bring in the person who's on the top. And they're not. Oh, I can hear them.
You hear me? Hello?
Kind of. You got one bar.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, the audio is absolutely terrible. Sorry. Bring up Tristan. I see Quack is back, but I was talking to... Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Not too much.
Just as a fellow disciple of Lord Spanky, I'd like to extend my thanks and gratitude for you fully roasting over a nice warm smoke fire pre-sub, because he's an absolute demonstrable, horrible human being. And whenever I join his lives, Dawkins Jr., literally, Darth Dawkins is literally in his
Yeah, his username is fan of Darth Dawkins. It's like it's at Darth Dawkins fan, I think is what it is. No, I'm not kidding you. That's his username. Here, I'll go on. I'll pull up TikTok on my desktop and I'll tell you.
I didn't know that.
It's your handle is different than like your display name.
So funny.
So, it's not showing. Maybe he changed it because or he might have other accounts, because I looked at it a while back, and yeah, it was like literally at Darth Dawkins fan,
and
or something similar to that.
So, to no one's surprise, Darth has me blocked. So like Presub doesn't, and so when I join Presub's lives, Darth like pretty much auto kicks me whenever I say 3 words, and he realizes who I am, and then it's just really bad all around. But before that, I would join Presub's lives, and he would kick me pretty much like immediately once like his bullshit wasn't tolerated. It's really funny when he joins your live, because he can't do the like powerhouse.
Yeah. And no,
oh, you didn't? That was him.
I never muted him, and I let him speak for the most part. The only part I heard it, and I repeated it about 5 times, and then we just moved on.
Argument that I've seen, because he just does it so bad. I've seen like people who can kind of hold their own and at least respond to you whenever you talk to him. So it's really funny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right. Well, thank you.
Thanks for dismantling him.
How many bars you got now?
Oh, I turned the Wi-Fi on, so hopefully it should be good now. But, I'm not part of the presuppositionalist group, but I guess giving me a new sense of intrigue into learning more about stuff like evolution and biology. And
thanks.
Presup Mars definitely has a few pages of his Bible stuck together, if you know what I mean.
He goes from 6 to midnight when he reads his Bible.
Exactly.
Oh, and then God summoned 2 female bears to maul the 42 lads.
Oh my!
That's funny. All right. Anything else? I got a queue of people.
Oh no, you're all good. Go ahead. I appreciate you letting me on.
You're welcome. Hello there.
From hi.
Oh, because I'm weird and unpredictable.
So I'll let you choose the topic.
Oh, I never do that. Well, I don't know what you think. I mean, it's pretty clear that you know what I think, so I always tell the guests to decide what we talk about.
You can pick any one of your topics.
Do you disagree with? Okay, what would be the most interesting? So you think the Earth is flat?
Okay, so that's a harder one. Yes, there is an argument.
Okay, so why do you think the Earth is flat?
So you'd have to use the holographic principle. You'd have to use the idea that the information we receive is translated from 2D to 3D. You'd have to use the argument about how we use the process of forming shapes and
can you do any of those things or not?
Yeah, because it's all in your head. I mean, this is from the basis from how we conceive things, the kind of mechanisms that we use within our conscious processing. And if you just change one thing or one or two things, then yes, you could absolutely consider the Earth to be flat. Now, you could argue then that what about all the tools and measurements that would show
the holographic principle would say that the universe fundamentally is flat. It's not just the Earth that's flat. So are you.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be the basis of it.
Okay, well then that's just if that's the case, if everything's flat, then nothing is flat, because that's not what we mean. What flat or that's what not what flat earthers mean. What they mean is we do exist in a three-dimensional reality, but Earth is just simply flat across its surface, like on the macro scale, it's flat. So I am not a physicist. I don't not going to be. This is not a con for it. So, like, sorry to disappoint, but
that's fine. You can pick another one if you want. But there is an argument for that, based on how we kind of process information and how we turn it into the reality that we kind of see, and it's down to the way we process light waves and photons, etc., and then construct shapes and construct various. I mean, for example, you know, when they teach you how to draw, okay, they break down a human into like a cylindrical shape for the body, and then for the arms, and then a round shape for the head, and then we kind of see the figure. And is that's kind of how our depth perception and it adds on detail, shading, etc., etc. But at the very core level of how we input information, we construct these kind of objects, and all you had to do was change the way we construct those objects, and then bingo, you have a completely different reality. But like I said, it's a hard one. So any of the other ones, you want to go for any of the other ones?
Yeah, I guess evolution. So you don't think evolution is true?
I think the way to the idea of chance mutation.
Chance mutation?
Yeah, I mean, we have the copying errors of the DNA code and then information. But we've got so many problems. It's just top-down levels of problems. You've got the origins of life, such as the origins of life issue.
Well, that's not evolution. That doesn't have any bearing on whether or not evolution is true.
Well, it kind of does, because you got to kind of account for that as well, which wouldn't be a random process.
It doesn't matter. No, it wouldn't be a random process. There would actually be, because chemistry is not random. And there would actually even be natural selection, almost certainly autocatalytic, better is kind of a weird way of putting it, but a more successful autocatalytic process would have an advantage over others and could outcompete them. But or God created the fizz magic. That would in no way prove or disprove. Well, it wouldn't disprove anything we know about evolution. So I just want to talk about evolution. So you started off with saying
evolution. Then we've got the information theory issue. This idea about which is the information in the Shannon view is just garbled, like A, B, C, D, whatever, but it doesn't have any doesn't carry any information about how to enact things or change things. It's like the difference between a monkey typing 100 words and a poem. Yeah, one has, and so when we're looking at these DNA strands and the way they're written is what's important. And then when they look at the conceivably come about through chance mutation, at the very beginning.
It's not by chance. Talk about evolution. What problems?
But we are talking.
No, abiogenesis is not evolution. It's a different process. So,
okay.
What do you want? Evidence that life doesn't evolve? Do you see?
Well, okay. So we so I think that's important. I think that's important because okay, if you're going to say that a cell was created and from that process, then we get evolution. But as for cell to be created, I don't think the evolutionists, they kind of say that that's chance mutation that created the cell and its origins. I don't know. Okay, and then if we're gonna say then the cell duplicated itself and replicated itself, and then through mutations of the DNA, we get these different organisms, and then they evolve into different things. You've still got this copying issue. We have, like, in the DNA copying process, you have error checking facts. It's like a CD disc, right? It goes there and it checks everything, and if it finds an error, it goes back and puts what should be there in place. And then even
but
after
it's been... but other times it does not. And this is just so incredibly even. Do you think that the Noah's flood happened?
Well, again, this is
answer the question.
Well, not in a literal sense.
Do you think that when God created life on this planet, he created every single species that exists today?
It was designed. How it was designed, I don't know.
So you don't know.
The information we get from God, or the revelations we get from, whether it be the Buddhist sitting underneath a tree, or Moses up there with his 10 tablets, or Muhammad in his cave, this process of transferring information from a different dimension or different space, or whatever, it has to go through the filter of how we structure things. So we structure things in terms of time and space in the way our brain processes it, but that kind of transfer of information has to come through symbols. So it's symbolic. It's the way we have dreams. When we have dreams, they're all over the place. So
but you're not talking about anything at all. You're just saying words.
It's all over the place.
The idea that if the information changes, like the DNA information changes, and there's a process that selects for errors, it doesn't get every single error, and the error, because if life does not change in subtle ways, like everybody that denies to a certain extent, if life doesn't it isn't slightly different every generation, then life is far more likely to go extinct because environments change. So for example, resistant bacteria alive today?
Yes.
Okay, they evolved, and the only way for that to be possible was because every single bacteria is slightly different, and the ones that have unpredictable random differences in their genome that ended up being better able to survive the antibacterial drugs or whatever environment are the ones more likely to reproduce and survive. Classic natural selection. So this error, the necessary component that makes life able to thrive.
Okay, but there's a different theory that explains that. So, like the Lamarckian theory, where these environmental factors, and we know now that environmental factors can change the RNA expression, and so they cross generation, they go into the germline. So before we had this idea that you only had changes through DNA changes, but now we know for certainty with epigenetics
does change the genetics.
It doesn't change the DNA.
It changes
the RNA.
It changes the DNA molecule because it either methylates or and people tell me it, and I still always forget. It changes the way in which the DNA is expressed. Yeah. What Lamarck thought was that the environment imprints on the individual, and that characteristics that an individual acquired during its lifetime can be passed down. Lamarck in no way whatsoever predicted that a hereditary molecule, like the giraffe's long neck, he didn't predict that the giraffe's long neck would ooze its essence into the balls of the giraffe or anything like that. So the theory actually does. Lamarckism has been demonstrated to be false. I can't remember who it was. It was a German. It wasn't von Baer. I don't think so anyways, but it was a German scientist. And he
Yeah,
took
but
mice and he chopped off their tails in every single generation. And then he would breed the tailless mice together. And whenever they would have babies, he'd chop off their tails and then he would breed them together. And after multiple generations, there was absolutely no gene if a part of its body doesn't do anything with
change
respect to affecting the gene line. Now, it is true that the environment can methylate the DNA and change the way it's expressed later in life, but that's not.
But that accounts for things like, for example, if you take a horse and you take it out of the soil so that it undergoes a form of stress in its bone density, then that's passed down. So this is when you get the different horses, or in the expression of the beaks. So like if they change their diet and they ate different things, their beak structure would change. And this points to the idea
The only way
that,
their beak structure is going to change is if there are changes in genes or gene expression.
Gene expression from environmental factors, which is like they've eaten different things. So
sure, but we also know that changes in genes lead to morphological changes in organisms. That's been seen many times.
Yeah, there is a small amount, but it does for the diversity we have is kind of far-fetched, and the maths just doesn't lay it out.
What if, okay, let's say 500 million years from today, do you think that there will be no new organisms on the planet?
No, I don't. I don't think there will be more different organisms. I think there will be.
Why not?
They will be changed and adapted, but I don't think the extent, because in this Lamarckian or the neo-Lamarckian worldview, these changes can only occur if the RNA has the capacity or is an inbuilt design to adapt to different situations. So it's still limited. So you can if you have a bird, it can still only ever be a bird, but with slight variations.
But there's no limit to those slight. When an organism, let's say we look at 1,000 years worth of slight variations. In the next 1,000 years, different variations are going to accumulate, right?
Yeah.
And then in the next 1,000 years, even more different variations are going to be able to make species turn into completely different forms. Modern birds, they're still technically dinosaurs, cladistically, but they're not theropod dinosaurs really anymore.
I hear you.
Language does this kind of thing. 5,000 years ago, nobody spoke English. And if you want to say, look, the odds of somebody who doesn't speak English, or the odds of even a bunch of people who don't speak English, just one day, randomly, for no reason, spontaneously developing 400,000 new words that are of a new language is impossible. You're right, it is impossible. But what if every single generation, a microscopic amount of new accumulated differences in the language are there, and some artifacts of the language disappear? There are plenty of things we don't say anymore in a leads to non-English speakers, right?
Yeah.
And with the small genetic changes, there's nothing to say that it can't produce organisms that are radically different, especially when all of the differences that they have continue accumulating.
So here's an interesting thought for you. So we have this diversity, and we have like tribal languages in whatever region. But the common thing about all these languages is that we can translate between them, because underlying this language is a design. It's a process of how we conceptualize things, whether the way we see time as a linear process, how we categorize things, etc. And this is why we're able to translate Chinese into English and German into French, because it's within those design bounds. If you was to randomly or evolve the language so that it didn't abide by those laws or within those meaning.
Yes, so evolution is not a random process, and natural selection guarantees that only beneficial mutations are ones that accumulate. So this isn't like this isn't a gotcha, really in any way. You know that like there are genes in one group of organisms that you can literally transplant into other organisms and they still maintain a function, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because if you think about the fact that we share 95% of our genomes with mushrooms, right? This is like
we don't share even 1%.
We do. Mushrooms is one of our closest apart from primates.
It's absolutely
more closer than plants.
Not very close at all.
I think it's quite high, actually. Maybe we should.
It's
check.
not.
What is it? Can you check? Because I only have my mobile there. What is the
Okay, it's not going to be more than 5%.
Oh, it's huge. Honestly, it's really big. It's up there in the 90s. Or maybe 70, 80.
No, it's not. Literally,
what does it say?
Foxes and wolves are only 75% genetically identical.
What does it say about mushrooms?
We share with... There are a lot of problems with the way this data is given, too, because you'll hear we're 40% genetically identical to bananas, and we're not. Yeah. I know the study where that misunderstanding came from. Google AI is saying 30 to 50% of we share 30 to 50% of our DNA with mushrooms. I absolutely do not think that is correct. Because, like I said, a wolf and a wolf percent. So.
But this kind of, I mean, if you look at it from a programming or an engineering perspective, the fact that we share so much of our DNA, how you would program differences in different aspects. You'd have a core DNA and it would have subsets that break off from the core DNA to create different algorithms. This is a design thing. It's not necessarily an argument that we inherited through genetic mutations. It's an argument that there's a design element to it. If you're gonna make two different species, then why not share most of the things that matter, like how you see or how you move or how you.
That's a cute post hoc, but the evolution said that this would happen, and then we found the evidence for it. So we have supporting evidence of evolution. Actually disproven if the genetics revealed that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be that in design. I think the only way you do falsify evolution is through mathematics. It's whether these things could have occurred within the time frame that's given. And there's been quite a lot of progress in this, and it's only going to get the timelines are only going to go further up because of the more we know and understand.
That's just going to be an argument from ignorance.
But that's the falsification method.
It's actually not, because exactly what you're talking about has been done in other fields, and then in the early 20th century, lots of extremely intelligent scientists like Robert Oppenheimer and many more did all of the math behind everything we knew about atoms and nuclear chain reactions or whatever, and they all concluded it is literally impossible to split the atom and get a chain reaction. They proved it countless times with mathematics, that you cannot achieve a critical mass or a sustained reaction or whatever. And then some guy, which proved that the mathematical argument was, I mean, the math agreed with itself, but that says nothing about what other what additional information we may later learn.
Yeah,
So these mathematical things, these are just sophisticated arguments from ignorance
I
or
think you're
incredulity.
comparing apples and pears, and I'll tell you why.
No, I'm not.
Comparing apples and pears, because when it comes to evolution, the driving force behind evolution is this idea of mutations and then adaptation to the environment, or beneficial adaptation, and that
which has been
involves
experimentally proven to occur.
On a micro level. You can get some things, but but on a macro level, then you're going to fall into these constraint issues where you've got informational theory and you're just, it's like changing 2 digits on a 2-page line of code. It's just going to fall apart.
Why would it fall apart specifically?
Because if it's everything has its place. It's informational. It's not just a process.
Natural selection isn't random.
Yeah, it's true. Natural selection isn't random because they have to survive through the various intergenerational things, and then the strongest one kind of comes out, and that gene stays with them. But you've got things like the irreducible issue. How do you create a drill network, whatever it is, in a hydrophobic pump, one of these things that exist in the cell, when you need all of the parts together? It doesn't add up. I mean, at the end of the day, the more complex it gets,
another argument from incredulity, and two, I don't know about the pump you're talking about, but like the flagella, that has been experimentally proven to be false. Removed component after component from the flagella and showed that it does maintain functionality. Not the same functionality, but that doesn't actually really matter.
Yeah. I'll have a look at that because obviously that's one of the main
arguments. In my book, I talked about it in the book.
Yeah, but if you're looking at this saying this is incredulity, you complex and everything, and so you're only arguing because it's so sophisticated and you couldn't conceive of it being that way. But doesn't that then kind of point to design being the natural option or the most plausible option? Why is that not an option?
I didn't say it's not an option.
Why is design not an option?
I didn't say it's not an option. I'm telling you that what you're trying to do is you're not giving me reasons why design is likely to be true. You're saying that I'm telling you why I think that's false. That doesn't equate to points for the opposite.
Everything up and have specific functionality and everything we know is that behind it is design, and so it would be completely normal and natural to say, if we look at processes that happen within the cellular biology, it's this complicated system and all that the most obvious answer is that they're designed. But we get this process where it's like, no, you're introducing this aspect of a creator or a designer, and no, we can't go there.
Yeah, I wasn't listening. Anyways, do you have any final thoughts?
For talking to me and indulging me.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated.
All right. Oh yeah. All right. Well, good luck on the victory royale. Pretty much do have to. I was going to see real quick what that person wanted to talk to, but this is a good one lately. So this was nice. Yeah, let's